My parents secretly stole my college fund to pay for my golden child brother's wedding. They thought I'd never find out. Now, I'm forcing them to sell their house. For my entire life, I operated under one simple belief that if I worked hard enough and kept my head down, I would earn my future. My parents always presented themselves as fair, hardworking people. They taught me about responsibility. They taught me about saving. And they taught me about the college fund. It was my reward, my nest egg, a trust fund that my grandparents had set up for me the day I was born. It wasn't $1 billion, but it was enough for tuition, enough for books, enough for a life without crippling debt. It was my path out. It was my independence. My brother David never needed a path out. He was the golden child. Everything came easy to him. While I studied, he partied. While I saved my money for my part-time job, he racked up credit card debt. And my parents always bailed him out. His charm was his currency, and my parents were his personal bank. I never really cared. I just focused on my goal. Get into a good university, use the fund, build my life. The lie unraveled 3 months ago. I had just been accepted into my dream university. I was ecstatic. I ran home to tell my parents the good news and to finally start the process of accessing the college fund. I found them in the kitchen. They weren't celebrating. They were arguing in low-hushed whispers that stopped the second I walked in. "Mom? Dad? I got in," I said, waving the acceptance letter. My mother's face went pale. Not happy, not proud, pale with pure terror. My father wouldn't even look at me. He just stared into his coffee cup like it held the answers to the universe. "What is it?" I asked, the excitement in my stomach turning sour. "What's wrong?" My mother started, her voice trembling. "We need to talk to you about the wedding." The wedding, of course, my brother David's wedding. For the past 6 months, the entire universe had revolved around David's wedding to his equally spoiled fiancée. It was all they talked about. The flowers, the venue, the ridiculous 7-tier cake. "What about the wedding?" I asked. "I know it's expensive, but what does that have to do with me?" My father finally looked up. His eyes were cold. "We had to pay for it. Maya, your brother. He needed our help. The deposits were non-refundable." A sick feeling started to creep up my spine. What do you mean you had to pay for it? I thought David was paying for it." My mother burst into tears. "He tried, but his new business failed. He was broke. We couldn't let him be humiliated." "So you paid for it?" I said slowly. "You paid for his $100,000 wedding?" "We did what we had to do for family," my father said, his voice hardening. I looked at them. The expensive kitchen, the new car in the driveway. They didn't have that kind of money. Not liquid. I knew their finances. I was the one who helped them with their taxes. "How?" I whispered. "How did you pay for it?" My mother wouldn't stop crying. My father stood up and looked me straight in the eye. "We used the fund, Maya. We used your college fund." The world stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't feel my hands. "You what?" "We took out a loan against it," he said quickly. "We were going to pay it back. The investments went bad. The market turned. It's gone, Maya. The whole thing, it's gone." They had stolen my future. They had taken 18 years of compound interest, my grandparents' legacy, my one chance. And they had handed it to my brother so he could have a champagne fountain at his reception. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just felt cold. "You stole my money," I said. It wasn't an accusation. It was a fact. "We did not steal it," my father yelled, suddenly defensive. "It was family money. We were going to replace it before you even noticed." "But I noticed," I said. "Don't you dare take that tone with me," my father shot back. "We are your parents. We gave you everything." "Except my education," I replied. "David needed this wedding. Maya, it was important for his fiancé's family. It was an investment in his future." An investment. They had cashed out my future to invest in his. I looked at my mother, who was still sobbing into her hands. "Was it?" I asked her. "Was it worth it?" She looked up, her eyes red and puffy. "He's your brother. Maya, you would have done the same." And that was the moment I realized they weren't just thieves. They were delusional. They had justified the theft in their own minds. They had convinced themselves that I would have just handed it over. I turned around and walked to my room. I packed a single bag. "Where are you going?" my father demanded, following me down the hall. "You're not walking out on this family." "This isn't a family," I said, zipping the bag. "It's a criminal enterprise, and you two are the ringleaders." "You stop this!" he shouted, grabbing my arm. I pulled my arm away. "Don't touch me. You've taken enough." I walked out the front door. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have any money. The only thing I had was a single piece of paper, the original trust document my grandparents had given me when I turned 18, the document my parents thought I had forgotten about. They thought the money was gone. They thought they had just taken out a loan and lost it. They had no idea what they had actually done. They hadn't just taken a loan, they had committed fraud. And I was the only one who had the proof. My revenge wouldn't be yelling, it wouldn't be crying, it would be legal, and it would be absolute. I walked out of that house with one bag, one acceptance letter, and a trust document my parents thought was just a sentimental piece of paper. The air outside was cold, but I was colder. I was numb. The family I thought I had was a fiction. The future I had planned was gone. I didn't have a plan. I just walked. I ended up at a 24-hour diner, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tastes like burnt regret. I sat there until the sun came up. I had $43 in my wallet. My first call wasn't to a friend, it was to the university. I spoke to the financial aid office. I explained that my family financial situation had drastically changed overnight. It was the understatement of the century. They were kind but firm. Without the trust fund money, I couldn't afford the tuition. The acceptance letter in my bag was now just a very expensive piece of paper. I deferred my admission for a year, a whole year. It felt like a lifetime. I found a room to rent on the bad side of town. I got 2 jobs, one as a waitress at that same diner, and one filing paperwork in a stuffy back office. For 6 months, I vanished. I didn't call my parents. I didn't call David. I let them think I was broken. I let them think I had given up. But I wasn't broken. I was building. Every night I would come home to my tiny room, my hands smelling like coffee and old paper, and I would pull out the trust document. I read it and reread it. I wasn't a lawyer, but I was smart, and I was motivated. The document was clear. My grandparents had set up the trust. My parents were the trustees. Their job was to protect the money. They were allowed to manage the investments, but they were absolutely forbidden from withdrawing principal for personal use or for the use of any other beneficiary. David was not a beneficiary of my trust. They hadn't just lost the money in a bad investment, as my father claimed. They hadn't borrowed it. They'd stolen it. They had committed felony-level fiduciary fraud. The problem was proving it. I needed bank records. I needed statements. I needed a trail that led from my trust fund account directly to David's wedding planner. My first step was to get a lawyer. I couldn't afford a shark like Sarah from the last story. I needed someone cheap. Or better yet, hungry. I found him through a legal aid clinic. A young guy named Ben who was just starting out. He looked exhausted. But when I told him the story, his eyes lit up. He hated entitled rich families. He agreed to take my case on contingency. He wouldn't get paid unless I got paid. Maya, he said, this case is a slam dunk if we can get the bank records. But as trustees, your parents have everything locked down. They'll fight us at every turn. We need a smoking gun. The smoking gun was at their house, but I couldn't go back. Not yet. So I started with David, my golden child brother. I unblocked his number. It took less than an hour for him to text me. Maya, where are you? Mom and Dad are worried sick. I almost laughed. Are they? I texted back. Yes, we thought something terrible happened to you. Why did you just leave? I needed some space, I replied. Things were complicated. Look, I know you're upset about the money, he wrote. Dad explained it. It was a bad investment. He's going to make it right. This was my opening. I know he will, I typed. I need to get my own finances in order. For my student loans, I need to prove the money is gone. Do you have the name of the bank that held the trust? I need to get a final statement. He hesitated. I don't know, Maya. Dad handles all that. Please, David, I begged. I'm drowning in paperwork. I just need the bank's name. That's it. He was stupid. He was arrogant. And he felt a tiny sliver of guilt. It was enough. He sent me the name of the bank. First National Trust Bank. Don't tell Dad I told you. I won't, I lied. First National Trust Bank. Now I had a target. Ben and I drafted a letter. A formal legal request for me, the beneficiary to the bank, requesting a full accounting of the trust's activity for the last 5 years. We sent it via certified mail. A week later, we got a response. Not from the bank, from my father's new lawyer. All communications regarding the trust must be directed to our office. We have advised the bank to deny your request, pending a formal court order. They were stonewalling. They were terrified. And a terrified person is a sloppy person. My father thought he had cut me off. He had, from the trust. But he had forgotten about the family. My Aunt Linda, my father's sister. She was the black sheep. She had never liked my father's arrogance or my mother's obsession with appearances. She had always liked me. I hadn't spoken to her in 6 months. I found her on Facebook. We met for coffee. She was horrified by the story. He what? He stole your grandparents' money? For David's wedding? He says it was a loan, I said, and a bad investment. Aunt Linda laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. A bad investment? Is that what he's calling it? Maya, your father wouldn't know a good investment if it bit him. He's a gambler, always has been. Your mother just covers for him. I felt a chill. What do you mean? He doesn't just invest, she said, lowering her voice. He gambles, online. He thinks he's a genius. He loses a lot. Your mother has been covering his debts for 20 years. This changed everything. It wasn't just about David's wedding. The wedding was just the last withdrawal. They had been draining my trust fund for years to cover my father's secret gambling habit. David's wedding was just the final nail in the coffin. How do you know? I asked. Because he tried to get money from me, Linda said. About a year ago. Said he was in a temporary bind. I refused. A week later, he was driving a new car. I always wondered where he got the money. Now I know. He got it from you. I had the motive. I had the co-conspirator, my mother. I still needed the proof. Linda, I said, I need to get into the house. When? David's wedding. It's next month. They'll all be there. The house will be empty. She looked at me a long time. Then she smiled. I still have my old key. I'll drive you. The day of the wedding was the longest day of my life. I wasn't at the church watching my future be celebrated. I was waitressing a double shift, trying to ignore the sympathetic looks from my coworkers. At 7 p.m., my aunt picked me up. The wedding reception was in full swing. We drove to my parents' house. The lights were off. It looked dead. You have 30 minutes, Linda said. I'll keep watch. I used her key. The lock clicked open. The house was silent. It was strange being there. It didn't feel like home. It felt like a crime scene. I knew exactly where to go. My father's office. The one room he always kept locked. Linda's key worked. The office was immaculate. But I wasn't looking for neatness. I was looking for chaos. I went straight for the shredder. It was full. I went to his desk. The drawers were locked. I used a screwdriver I'd brought from the diner. I pried the main drawer open. Wood splintered. I didn't care. Inside was a mess of papers, credit card statements, loan applications. And then I saw it. A dark green checkbook. It wasn't for his personal account. It was for the trust. The Maya J. Trust Fund. He had been using it like his own personal piggy bank. I started taking pictures with my phone. Every check stub, every statement. Check number 1034. Pay to the Gilded Lily, the wedding caterer. Amount $40,000. Memo. David's wedding deposit. Check number 1035. Pay to Bridal Dreams Inc. Amount $15,000. Check number 1036. Pay to Mercedes-Benz of Manhattan. Amount $10,000. Memo. Down payment. He wasn't even trying to hide it. His arrogance was breathtaking. But this was just the recent stuff. This was just the wedding. I needed the rest. I needed the gambling. I went to his computer. It was password protected, of course. I tried his birthday. No. My mother's birthday? No. David's birthday. It unlocked. The golden child. Of course. I opened his browser. His history was clean. He was stupid, but not that stupid. I checked his documents. I found a folder named Taxes. Inside was another folder named MISC. Inside that was a single encrypted file, Ledger. My heart stopped. I didn't have time to crack an encrypted file. I looked around the desk. Taped to the bottom of his keyboard was a yellow sticky note, a single word, David Golden Boy 1. It wasn't a password. It was a key. I went back to the file. I used it. It opened. It was a spreadsheet, a detailed ledger of every transaction from my trust fund for the last 10 years. Withdrawal after withdrawal. Investment, Apex Global, a known offshore gambling site. Cash transfer. Loan repayment, VM. It was a systematic 10-year-long robbery. My father had been draining my future to pay for his past. David's wedding wasn't the cause. It was just the final withdrawal that emptied the account. They had stolen over $500,000. I didn't just take pictures. I plugged in a USB drive. I copied the file. I copied his entire tax folder. I copied everything. Maya, 5 minutes, Linda hissed from the doorway. I was working. I grabbed the checkbook. I grabbed the most recent bank statements from the shredder bin. I took everything that mattered. I left the drawer broken. I left the office a mess. I wanted them to know. We got in the car. I was shaking. Not with fear, with rage. Pure, white-hot rage. Did you get it? Linda asked. I got it all, I said. I got the proof. The next morning, I was at Ben's office. We spread the documents on his desk. He looked at the spreadsheet. He looked at the check stubs. He just whistled. This isn't just fraud, Maya, he said. This is a criminal case. This is jail time. I don't want him in jail, I said. Ben looked at me. What do you want? I want my money back, I said. All of it, with interest. And I want them to pay. I want them to feel what I felt. That's a tall order, he said. They'll declare bankruptcy. They'll hide the assets. They have one asset I want, I said. The house. Ben smiled. The house? Okay, I can work with this. We won't file a criminal complaint yet. We'll start with a civil suit. We'll freeze their assets. We'll put a lien on the house so big they won't be able to breathe. The next few months were a blur of legal motions. My parents were served. The lawsuit hit them like a truck. They tried to fight. They hired the big lawyer. He tried to claim I had given verbal permission. He tried to claim the documents were faked. Ben destroyed them. We had the spreadsheet. We had the check stubs. We had the bank's own internal logs from the gambling sites. My father's defense crumbled. My mother was forced to testify. She lied on the stand saying she knew nothing. Ben produced a check she had written from the trust account to pay off her own credit card. She committed perjury. The case was over. The judge was furious. He called their actions despicable and a monstrous violation of parental trust. He ordered them to repay the full amount plus punitive damages, plus my legal fees. The total was just over $1.2 million. Of course, they didn't have it. They had spent it all on David and on gambling. As Ben had predicted, they filed for bankruptcy. But the judge wasn't done. He ruled that the debt was incurred via fraud and embezzlement, which meant it could not be discharged by bankruptcy. They were trapped. They owed me $1.2 million, and they had no way to pay it, except the house, the penthouse. The symbol of all their arrogance, Ben put the lien on it. They couldn't sell it. They couldn't refinance it. They were stuck. I waited. I let them sweat for a month. I let them feel the walls closing in. Then came the best part. The part I had been waiting for. My brother David, the golden child. His new wife had left him the day the judgment came down. Apparently, she hadn't signed up to marry the son of bankrupt criminals. He called me, crying. Maya, please, you have to stop this. You're destroying the family. Mom and Dad, they're going to lose the house. Where will they live? I listened to him sob. I listened to his pathetic excuses. And then I said, "You're right, David. I should have thought of that. Tell them I have a solution, a way for them to keep the house." David was sobbing on the phone. It was a pathetic, wet sound that made my skin crawl. "Maya, please," he choked out. "You have to stop this. You're destroying the family. Mom and Dad, they're going to lose the house. Where will they live? You can't just throw them on the street." I listened to him. I listened to the panic in his voice. The same panic I had felt in that diner when I was counting the $43 in my wallet. The same panic I felt when I realized I couldn't go to college. The difference was my panic was silent. His was just loud. "They threw me on the street, David," I said, my voice flat. "Or did you forget that part?" "That was different," he insisted. "That was a mistake. Dad was going to pay it back." "You know he was. This is cruel. This is revenge." "Yes, David," I said. "It is. Welcome to the party." "But what are they supposed to do?" he yelled. "They have no money. You know that. You took it. You're ruining their lives over some stupid wedding." "The wedding wasn't the start, David. It was the end," I shot back. "Did you know about the gambling? Did you know Dad had been draining my trust fund for 10 years to pay off his online poker debts? Did you know your new Mercedes was a down payment for my college fund? Or did you just not bother to ask?" He was silent. The sobbing stopped. It was a heavy, guilty silence. He knew. Of course he knew. He was the golden child. He always knew where the gold came from. "It doesn't matter," he finally whispered. "They're still our parents. You can't just take their home." I looked around my tiny rented room. The walls were thin. I could hear my neighbor's TV. "You're right, David," I said, a sudden idea forming in my mind. "I should have thought of that. I shouldn't just take their home. I have a better solution. A way for them to keep the house and for me to get what I'm owed." He practically choked with relief. "You'll stop? You'll drop the lawsuit? Oh my God, Maya, thank you." "I will not drop the lawsuit," I cut him off. "That money is mine. But I have a different solution. Tell Dad to check his email. I'm sending it now. It's a formal offer. He has 24 hours to respond." I hung up before he could say another word. My offer was simple. I had Ben draft it and send it from his legal office. It was an offer to buy the penthouse. I wasn't offering them cash, I was offering them a trade. I would forgive the entire $1.25 million judgment. In exchange, they would sign the house over to me free and clear. I was offering to take the very symbol of their arrogance, the place where they humiliated me as payment for their crime. I was offering them a clean slate. I gave them 24 hours. My father's response came in less than one. It wasn't an email. It was a voicemail. A screaming 30-second rant so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. He called me a snake. He called me a vulture. He said he would burn that penthouse to the ground before he ever let me set foot in it again. He said he would see me in hell. And he said, "I've hired a real lawyer. Not your ambulance-chasing kid. You're finished." So that was his answer. He had chosen war. Fine. I had been ready for war for 6 months. My father's new lawyer was exactly the kind of man I expected. Expensive suit, oily smile. He was a shark just like Sarah, but without the morals. His first move was to counter-sue. He sued me for emotional distress, for defamation, because I had told Aunt Linda the truth, and for theft. He claimed the documents I took from the office were stolen property. It was a classic slap suit, a strategic lawsuit against public participation designed to bury me in legal fees, designed to intimidate me, designed to make me run out of money and give up. They were still operating under the assumption that I was that same girl with $43 in her wallet. They had no idea what I had become. He's trying to bleed us dry, I said to Ben. He is, Ben said. It's a standard bully tactic. It won't work. Why not? We don't have their money. No, Ben said, smiling. We have something better. We have their money, the money they owe you. I filed a motion. The judges agreed. A portion of their frozen assets has been allocated to pay for your legal defense against their frivolous countersuit. I stared at him. You're telling me my father has to pay you to defend me from his own lawsuit? That's exactly what I'm telling you, Ben said. Arrogance is expensive. The next 6 months were hell. I kept my 2 jobs. I worked, I slept, and I spent every other waking moment in Ben's office preparing for the depositions. This was the heart of the battle. My father was first. He walked in like he owned the place. Swagger. He sat across from me at that long polished table and he wouldn't even look at me. His new shark lawyer tried to control everything. He objected to every question. Objection. Relevance. Objection. Hearsay. Ben just calmly waited. And then he began. Mr. Johnson, Ben said, let's talk about your investments. You're quite the financial wizard, correct? I do all right. My father sneered. Good. Then you can explain this transfer from the Maya J. Trust Fund for $20,000 to an entity called Apex Global Solutions. My father licked his lips. It was an investment. A tech startup. A tech startup? Ben repeated. He placed a second document on the table. That's strange, because Apex Global Solutions is a registered corporation in Costa Rica. And according to their business filing, their sole purpose is online sports entertainment. It's a gambling site, isn't it? My father went white. His lawyer yelled, objection. Overruled, Ben said quietly. Is it or is it not a gambling site, Mr. Johnson? It was a speculative investment. So you were speculating your daughter's college fund on the Super Bowl? I object, the shark yelled. And this one, Ben continued, sliding another paper. A loan repayment to a VM. Who is VM? I don't recall. Would it help if I reminded you his name is Vinny the Mallet Marconi, a known loan shark in the tri-state area? Is it your testimony that you were borrowing money from a loan shark and repaying him with your daughter's education money? My father's face was purple. I was managing the fund. It was my right. It was your duty, Mr. Johnson. A fiduciary duty, which you violated. Now let's talk about the wedding. It went on like this for 8 hours. 8 solid hours. Ben dismantled him. Check by check. Lie by lie. The $40,000 for the caterer. The $15,000 for the bridal shop. The $10,000 down payment on his Mercedes. By the end, my father wasn't arrogant. He was just a small sweating man who had been caught. He knew he was ruined. But the real show was my mother. She came in the next day. She had chosen a different tactic. Tears. She was the perfect victim. She was a confused wife who just signed what her husband told her to. She claimed she had no idea about the trust fund. She just thought they were moving money around. She was just trying to be a supportive wife and a loving mother to David. It was a brilliant performance, she cried. She dabbed her eyes. She looked at me with a look of pure heartbroken betrayal. I can't believe you would do this to us, Maya, she sobbed. To your own family. Ben let her cry. He let her spin her web of lies for almost an hour. He was gentle. He was sympathetic. So you knew nothing about the money, Ben said softly. You just signed where he pointed. Yes, that's right, she wept. I'm not good with numbers. He handles everything. You never used the trust fund for your own personal expenses? Never. I would never do such a thing, she said, horrified. That's a relief, Ben said. He slid a document across the table. It was an American Express statement in her name from 3 years prior. This is your credit card, correct, Mrs. Johnson? Yes, I believe so. And this charge here, Ben said, pointing. A $5,000 charge to the Gucci boutique on Fifth Avenue. Do you recall this purchase? I buy things sometimes. I don't remember. A $5,000 handbag? Ben asked. You don't remember? It was a gift for my sister. She lied. I see, Ben said. He slid a second document next to the first. It was a check, written from the Maya J. Trust Fund, written one day after the Gucci purchase for the exact amount of $5,000. Is this your handwriting, Mrs. Johnson? My mother stopped crying. She just stared at the check. Is it your handwriting? Ben repeated. Yes. And what does the memo line say? She was silent. Please read the memo line for the court, Ben insisted. My mother's voice was a dead whisper. Personal loan repayment? CJ. CJ, Ben said, your initials, so you did know about the trust. And you did use it for personal expenses. You used your daughter's college fund to pay for your handbag. And you just lied about it under oath. My mother didn't say anything. She just stared at the check. She had been caught. She had just committed perjury. The depositions were over. Their entire case was gone. Their shark lawyer quit the next day. He cited irreconcilable differences. Of course he did. He knew they were toxic. He knew they couldn't pay his bill. They were forced to hire a public defender who looked overwhelmed. The trial itself was almost a formality. It was short. I walked into that courtroom feeling like I weighed 1,000 pounds. I saw my parents sitting at the defense table. They looked small, old, defeated. David was sitting in the gallery behind them, his head in his hands. He wouldn't look at me. For a single second, I almost felt pity. Then I remembered that diner. I remembered the $43 in my wallet. I remembered the smell of old coffee and bleach from my waitress uniform. I remembered 6 months of grinding work while they lived in luxury. And the pity vanished. It was replaced by steel. Ben was masterful. He didn't gloat. He just laid out the facts. The 10 years of theft, the systematic draining of the account, the gambling, the car, the final brazen act of stealing my future to pay for a wedding. He presented the spreadsheet. He presented the checks. He presented my mother's credit card statement. It was an open and shut case. The judge was a no-nonsense older woman. She looked like she had seen everything, and she was furious. When Ben rested his case, she didn't even wait for the defense to speak. She looked at my parents. "I have been on this bench for 30 years, she said, her voice quiet but shaking with rage. "I have seen murderers. I have seen thieves. But I don't think I have ever seen a breach of trust so monstrous. To steal from your own child, to take her future, her one advantage in life given to her by her grandparents, and to burn it. To burn it on gambling and parties and cars." She shook her head in disgust. "It is despicable." My father tried to stand up. "Your Honor, we were going to pay it back." "You will be silent," she snapped. "You had 10 years to pay it back. You didn't. You just kept stealing." She looked at the paperwork. "This court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Maya Johnson." She banged the gavel. "I am ordering the defendants to repay the full amount stolen, $570,000. I am also awarding punitive damages in the amount of $600,000 for the sheer maliciousness of your actions. And I am ordering the defendants to pay all of the plaintiff's legal fees. Total judgment, $1.25 million. My mother let out a strangled sob. It was a sound I will never forget. But the judge wasn't done. "And furthermore," she said, looking directly at their lawyer, "this court finds that this debt was incurred via willful and malicious injury fraud and embezzlement. Therefore, this debt cannot be discharged in bankruptcy. You will pay her. You will pay her every cent." The gavel fell again. It was done. I walked out of the courtroom without looking back. My parents were ruined, trapped. They owed me over $1 million and they had no way to get it. They couldn't declare bankruptcy. They were stuck in that penthouse, a prison of their own making. Ben filed the lien immediately. They couldn't sell it. They couldn't refinance it. They couldn't get a single dollar out of it. All they could do was sit in it and wait. I let them sit. I let them sweat. I let them marinate in the consequences of their actions for 2 long months. I went back to my life. I worked. I saved. I heard through Aunt Linda that their lives had imploded. My father was being investigated for criminal charges based on the evidence from the trial. My mother was a recluse. And David, my golden brother, his new wife, his trophy, had left him the day the judgment came down. Apparently, she hadn't signed up to marry the son of bankrupt criminals who had no inheritance. He was working a minimum wage job. The news didn't make me happy. It just made me feel quiet. It was the sound of balance returning to the universe. After 60 days, I made my move. Ben sent the final letter. It was the same offer as before. "My client, Maya Johnson, hereby offers to forgive the entire $1.25 million debt. In exchange, you will sign over the full deed and title to the penthouse apartment at this address. You will vacate the premises in 30 days. This time, they didn't hesitate. The signed papers were on Ben's desk in less than 24 hours. It was either give me the house or have their wages garnished for the rest of their natural lives. They chose the quicker execution. I spent the next month working at the diner, saving every tip. On the day they were supposed to move out, I took a taxi to the penthouse. It was the first of the month I saw them on the sidewalk. My father and my mother, standing next to a pile of expensive suitcases. They looked lost old, beaten. A moving truck was pulling away with the last of their things. They watched me get out of the cab. My father's face was purple with rage. My mother just looked defeated. I walked right past them. I didn't say a single word. I went up the elevator. I used my new key. The lock clicked open. The apartment was empty, echoing. They had taken their clothes but left the heavy, expensive furniture. They couldn't afford to move it. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows. I looked out over the city that had almost broken me. My phone buzzed. It was a text from David. "Are you happy now? You took everything. You took their home. I hope you're happy." I looked at the text for a long time. I thought about the last year, the cold room, the double shifts, the panic, the rage. I thought about the wedding I never had, the education I never got. And I realized I wasn't happy. Happy was too small a word. I was something else. I was balanced. The scales were finally level. I texted him back. "Yes, David, I am. Tell them to send me their new address. I want to send them a housewarming gift. I sold the penthouse a week later. I sold it in a cash deal to a foreign investor. The market was high. I sold it for $3.5 million. After paying the capital gains tax and Ben's well-deserved 30% contingency fee, I was left with a life-changing amount of money. The first thing I did was call my university. I re-enrolled. I paid the entire 4 years of tuition up front, in cash. The second thing I did was set up a new trust fund, a real one, in my name, with a bank I trusted, a fund that no one could touch. And the housewarming gift? My parents had moved into a small rented apartment in a bad neighborhood, the same one I had lived in. I sent them a check for $10,000, exactly the amount they had offered me in their insulting prenup. I included a small note, just a formality. I never saw them again. I finished my degree with honors. I started my own company. I built my own future. Sometimes I think about what they did, how they could steal from their own daughter, and I realized they taught me the most valuable lesson of all. They taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about trust. And that when someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them, and then you should send them the bill. Thank you for listening to the story. If you enjoy this kind of content and want to hear more, subscribe and turn on all notifications. A new story will be waiting for you.